All right, get this. Today's deep dive, we're going prime time, baby. Prime numbers.
I love the enthusiasm.
Well, before you think this is back to basic math class, stick with us. We're diving into this document, M8AX, Mprimos.txt. This thing's a trip. It's all about a program, right, that calculates prime numbers.
And it's way more intriguing than just a list. It's like this unexpected peek into some seriously cool stuff, math, obviously, but programming too. And get this, even a bit about the phone it was run on.
No way. Okay,
Yeah.
so for anyone tuning in who needs a little refresher, when we say prime numbers, we're talking those numbers bigger than 1 that can only be divided by 1 in themselves, like 2, 7, 13, all the classics.
Those are the VIPs of the math world. Seriously.
Mhm.
Think about it. Cryptography, the backbone of keeping everything in our digital lives secure. Yeah, prime numbers are essential for that.
Okay, now that's putting it into perspective. This document is really something else. So this guy, Ochoa Diez, he's the one behind it, and he actually tells us straight up that he used a Xiaomi Mi 9 Lite to run this program. I mean, come on, that's pretty cool. How often do you get that level of detail?
It just shows how accessible all of this is these days. You don't need some massive supercomputer hidden in a basement to get your hands dirty with this kind of math. Nope, just a regular smartphone.
That's wild. But here's where my mind is blown. The entire program, get this, only 152 lines of code. I'm not a programmer or anything, but crunching numbers, finding prime numbers all the way up to 7,500,000, I'd expect something way more complicated.
Right, it's incredibly concise. This Marcos guy, he knew what he was doing. Talk about efficient programming. It makes you wonder, how did he manage to optimize that code to be so incredibly streamlined?
Yeah, that's a good question. So getting into the nitty-gritty here, the program found, are you ready for this, 508,261 prime numbers. That's in that 7.5 million number range. Like, whoa.
It's a lot. You'd think they'd be as common as odd numbers or something, but the further you go down that number line, the less frequent they pop up.
Yeah.
It's like trying to find a specific grain of sand on a beach.
Okay. That's a good way to put it. I get it. And I like this document. It doesn't just throw a giant list of primes at you, right? It gives you these little snapshots along the way.
Absolutely. And those examples are super insightful. Seeing primes at different points, you start to see how they're spread out, the patterns, it helps you understand their whole deal.
Yeah, and it's not just random numbers. It's like, take the prime number 2,657, right? It's right there sandwiched between two other primes, 2,659 and 2,663. That kind of clustering, it's more common than you think. Almost like prime numbers, they like to hang out together sometimes.
Wait, really? Prime numbers, they're social butterflies now. I always thought they were all about that I'm an individual, can't divide me vibe.
Well, there's a lot we still don't get about how they're spread out, But these little glimpses, these snapshots from the program, they're like clues for mathematicians. They use them to test out theories, try to wrap their heads around how these numbers behave. That's pretty neat. So it's not just about finding them, it's like figuring out the why behind where they decide to show up. Okay, so we talked about how many primes this program found, but what about the how? This is where things get really wild.
You're talking about the performance,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, it's impressive. Marco's program, it did all those calculations in, get this, 1 second. 1 second to find over 500,000 prime numbers. Let that sink in for a sec.
A second? You're kidding. I think my phone takes longer to send a text message. It's like, imagine scrolling through a contact list, 500,000 names in 1 second. That's basically what we're talking about.
It really shows you the power these little devices have and the code itself, the way it's put together. The document mentions if you took every digit of all those primes and wrote them out in a line, it would stretch for over 15 kilometers.
Okay, hold up. 15. My brain just, whoa. That's like, okay, way longer than my usual walk, let's put it that way. It's crazy how this document, it's just numbers on a page, but it makes you think about these massive scales.
It's true. Numbers can be deceptively huge. It reminds me of this analogy Marcos uses. He compares the program's processing power to, get this, processing 1.7 copies of Don Quixote. The entire book, every second.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Talk about speed reading. I'm lucky if I finish a chapter in a day.
Right. It's brilliant, though. He takes something everyone knows, kind of, the length of a big fat book, and suddenly you get a feel for how powerful this program is.
Like you just ate Don Quixote for a snack. I'm starting to think finding those prime numbers was the easy part. The real story is the speed, the efficiency.
You got it. This whole thing, it's bigger than just prime numbers. It's like a peek behind the scenes at computational power, what good programming can do, how deep you can go with even simple math.
So much more than just math class, huh? I have to admit, I'm more interested in prime numbers now than I ever thought I'd be.
That's the beauty of these deep dives, right? Start with something basic, end up with a million questions.
So we've seen this program do its thing, zoom all the way 7,500,000, find a ton of prime numbers along the way. But what about, like, beyond that? What about the primes hiding out in even bigger numbers?
That's the real mystery, right?
Mm.
We're just looking at a tiny piece of a giant puzzle. The number line, it just keeps going,
Yeah.
which means endless trimes out there waiting for someone to find them.
So even with all our fancy computers and algorithms, we're still just scratching the surface of prime numbers.
Kind of, yeah. The bigger the numbers get, the harder it is to find those prime numbers. Like trying to find a needle in a haystack, but the haystack just keeps growing.
But people keep looking, right? Why is that? What's so important about finding these prime numbers anyway?
It's not just about the challenge, though that's part of it for sure. Prime numbers, they're like fundamental to how we understand math. Figuring them out, it could unlock all sorts of new stuff, like better cryptography, faster computers, who knows?
So this program we've been talking about, it's impressive and all, but it's just one small step on a much bigger journey.
Exactly. Always more to learn, always deeper to dive. Someone out there could be coming up with a whole new way to find prime numbers right now.
Maybe there's another Marcos out there messing around on their phone, about to turn everything we know upside down. Kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
Totally. This whole deep dive, it just shows you something as simple as a list of prime numbers, it can open up a whole universe of questions and possibilities.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up our deep dive into the fascinating world of prime number calculation. We hope you've enjoyed this journey as much as we have. Until next time, keep those minds curious and keep exploring those fascinating corners of the universe.